Hi and welcome to this quick presentation of Vize software. So we're going to start with the import tab here and we're going to import a dataset. So here I have a folder with 4 different datasets, and as you can see in the Explorer, whenever I click on one of them, I get to see a quick preview right below of what the dataset looks like. So I get to see all the columns and a few lines just to get an understanding of the structure of the dataset. What's great about Vize is that it automatically detects the data type for each column. So here, for instance, it knows that order date is a time variable, and when I move over here, you can see that I can manually override the exact date format that I want. And it's the same for sales. So you see sales has been recognized as a numerical variable and region as a categorical variable, just to give you an example. And so keep in mind that everything can be manually overridden here. So let's move over and load one of the datasets, this one for instance. So now we're in the Explore tab, and the way the software presents itself is that on the left you have we have the data panel with all the different columns that we have in the dataset. So I can see that I have one time variable, several numerical variables, and several categorical variables. Here on the right I have a list of all the different charts which are available. I have the info panel, and we'll see later how it works. And right below we have the modifiers panel. The easiest way to create a chart is simply by double-clicking on the variable of interest. So here I can double-click on sales, and I get to see a distribution of my sales. Now if I erase this and I double-click on profit, I get to see a distribution of my profits. Now if I already have a distribution in place, like here I have the profit distribution, and I double-click on sales, what's happening? Then the software automatically understands that I want to see both variables simultaneously. And so it analyzes the fact that here it's dealing with 2 different numerical variables, and so it's choosing automatically the scatter plot as the best way, the best chart type to represent that type of data. Now what if I erase everything, I display sales, and then I double click on a categorical variable this time, like this, product subcategory. Now it's using a bar chart to represent the data. Why? Because it's I want to see an aggregated chart basically, because I have selected categories here. So it's doing the aggregation category by category of my sales, and it's using the operator sum, but I can change it here. I can use average, I can use the median of my sales by product subcategory, etc., etc. And as you can see in this bar chart, I have other options. For instance, here I have a field which is called stacked by, and I have 2 column modifiers here. So let's start with the column modifiers. Here I can take a variable, for instance shipping costs, I can drop it here and have the shipping cost, the variable shipping cost, code the color of each bar, and you can see here the color scale. So it's pretty cool. Then I can do the same with size. I can bring shipping costs and have it code the size here. And this is where it gets really interesting. I can use another variable to color code the bars as well. So here I simultaneously have a size coding and a color coding of my chart. So let's remove all of this. Let's say now that I want to build a stacked bar. So you can see here I have the stacked bar field. I can come and I can just drop in any categorical variable to make a different aggregation. So you see when I put customer segment here, each bar is now divided by customer segment. If I replace it by province, I get to see each bar divided by province. Okay, now let's come back to the scatter plots. So I'm going to create one by double clicking on profit and then sales. And as you can see here, I have four modifiers. So I have color, size, shape, and angle. So color, size, and angle can be coded either by a categorical variable or a numerical variable. But the shape modifier can only be coded by a categorical variable for obvious reasons. So it works the same as before. I can come here and drag different data tags and drop them here in the color, size, or angle. So you don't get to see anything with the angle because I first need to select a shape that allows us to see the angle, because circles are pretty symmetrical, so we don't see the angle variation. And here I can also take a categorical variable like this and drop it in the shape, and then you get to see all kinds of shape which are coding the categories of a product subcategory. So this is how it works. Now let's have a look at the aggregation. So you see this by field, I can drop in it any, so first, sorry, I'm gonna increase the size of the point so that we get to see something. So here I can drop any categorical variable like product container, for instance, and have it aggregate the chart. So see here, so I used to have a lot of data points, now I have just a few. I'm going to give you another example for customer segment, for instance. So you see I had a lot of different data points, and now I only have 4. And of course here I can always come back to the X and Y axis and change the aggregation operator that I'm using for the aggregation. So you see you can get to create pretty complex charts in this way. So I'm going to come back to color coding maybe and reduce the size like this. So what if now you want to create several charts to have an analytical dashboard? So it's very easy. All you have to do is you click right here to make sure you have deselected every variable, and then you can either select one type of chart. So for instance here I can click on the time chart, and then I can drag the appropriate data in the appropriate fields. So for instance, if I want to see my sales against time like this, I get to do it that way. Now there's another way which is way faster, is that you just press the Alt key and start clicking on a specific variable. So for instance profit here, and then I release the key and click on other variables, and they're going to populate automatically the chart. So here you see, for instance, if now I double click on the discount, so the discount is color coding this chart, you know, and I can come here and change the color just for illustration purposes. And that's it. And you see how quickly I can create an analytical dashboard with a lot of different charts. So this is pretty powerful. Okay, so now we have a dashboard. And as you can see here, I can come and select each and every chart individually. And when I do that, I get to see the different modifiers and the data slots which are available at the top, you see, and they're changing dynamically. Now, when I double click on the toolbar of a specific chart, I get to expand it. If I want to see the details here, work on it, and then come back here, and then I want to expand that one, come back to the dashboard. So it's very handy. So now what can you do in one chart? So here I'm going to expand the scatter plot, and as you can see, I can pan very fluidly and dynamically. I can zoom in and out, and you can see I don't have to laboriously draw a rectangle and then wait for the result of the zoom. I can rescale axis in the same way. Everything is interactive and dynamic. It's very, very powerful, and so you can reshape the data to make them look exactly as you want, to be able to distinguish patterns of interest. So now the other thing you can do in the data, which is very important, is the selection process. So here all I have to do is just drag the mouse like this, and I get to select a specific portion of the data. Here, 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 you see, I can make complex selections, and then I can use the deselection tool to remove data points. Say for instance I didn't want these points, or these, I didn't want that, you know. So you can make very complex selections, and this is very important if you want to highlight a specific area, specific clusters in this case, and analyze what you have here. So I'm going to come back to the dashboard, and it's the same here. For instance, it's the same here in the time chart, so I can start making a selection. In this case it's interval selection because it's a time chart, but the concept remains. And of course I can zoom in, zoom out, etc. using the same principles. One of the most powerful features in Vize is what we call dynamic clicking and brushing. As you see, when I have a dashboard like this, I can start making a selection in one chart, and I get to see dynamically my selection being updated in each and every other chart. So you see, it's extremely powerful and it's dynamic. So as I move the mouse back and forth, I get to see the result change in real time. And I can make complex selections here. I can start selecting in one chart and then deselect or reselect in another, and I get to see everything update, you know, as you can see here. So you see, it's extremely powerful what you can do. And what's fundamental about this is that when you are dealing, so here for instance I'm going to make a selection in the time chart. Sorry, I have the deselect tool. So if I start making a selection here in the time chart, I get to see the exact data points being highlighted here in a scatter plot because it's a non-aggregated scatter plot. But here it's a bar chart that's aggregated, and in the case of an aggregated chart, I get to see inside, like here, the results of the new aggregation of my selection. So the bars which are bright here, they represent the aggregation for just the part of the data that I have selected here. So you see, and as I start moving the mouse again to select, I see the bars move and the aggregation being recalculated in real time. So this is extremely, extremely powerful. Another feature that's very powerful in Vize is what we call the hot swap. To illustrate this, I'm going to expand this chart. So the idea behind the hot swap is that when you have a chart like this and say that you want to change the variable that's affected to the y-axis, for instance, and say that I want to put shipping costs. So I just can do this and that's it. So it's very easy when you have one variable. But say that you wanted to test maybe dozens or hundreds of different variables, it gets really complicated and time intensive. So the way to do this with hot swap is all you have to do is you double click on this variable, and then whenever you click on the variable on the left, it gets replaced, you see? So you can even use the up and down arrow keys like this to expedite the process and make sure that you sift through many variables very quickly and get to see them being plotted. And what's really powerful, once you're done, I mean, you just double click and you exit the mode, but what's really powerful is that it works whenever you have a data tag like this. So it works with colors, for instance, here, because I have color coded. So I can double click and then start investigating what color schemes is interesting. I can come and if I drag something here on size, I can do the same with size. I double click and then I start investigating what kind of variable gives me something interesting, a pattern interesting on the size axis, and so on and so forth. And it also works with aggregations. So just to give you another example with the bar chart like this, I'm going to expand this bar chart, and you see that it's somehow aggregated by product subcategory. I can double click on this and then start building different other charts, you see, like this. So it's very easy and powerful. So let's come back to the original chart like this. And now let's have a look at yet another powerful feature. So I'm going to create a distribution here. I'm going to hit the Alt key and double click on profit to create a profit distribution, and I'm going to expand that chart like this. And so of course I can zoom in and out like this, I mean rescale the axis. But what's more, it's very important, is that now you can change the number of bins dynamically. I mean, you probably know that the shape of a distribution depends on the number of bins that you select. And here you can change it dynamically just by clicking and dragging to the right or to the left if you want to reduce the number. And this is fundamental because you get to feel around with this and you get to see a specific phenomenon emerge. You see, sometimes you see a bar that's sticking out here, and this allows you to identify a specific phenomenon and select just that bar and see what it corresponds to in other charts. So this is unique to Vize and very powerful and handy. Now let's finish with the info panel, which is right here next to the charts panel. And just to explain how it works, I'm gonna expand this chart. So the info panel is meant to give you specific information about the selections you make. So if I make a selection right here, first of all, I get to see the number of rows that I selected, in this case 526, which represent slightly more than 6% of the whole data set. But what's better is that you can throw data tags in here in these fields and get to see the aggregated value of specific variables. So if, for instance, I want to monitor, let's say, for instance, the unit price, for instance. So I'm going to drop unit price here, and I want to see my average unit price. So I'm selecting the average as an aggregation operator. And then when I'm making a selection here, I see in real time, you see right here, the average unit price of my selection that is being calculated. So I can see when I'm adding data whether or not it's decreasing or increasing, and I get to monitor this very closely. And of course you can do this with several variables. For instance, I can use order quantity here and say that I want to see the median order quantity for what I'm selecting. I'm going to remove the selection and start making a new one. And you see, as I'm making a selection, I get to see the average unit price and the median order quantity being calculated in real time.